For most of the year, Salzburg sells itself to the world as a city of church domes, classical music, and soft Advent light. But on one winter night, that image cracks open. The same streets that glow with Christmas stalls and candlelit windows suddenly fill with horned figures in animal fur, carved faces twisted into snarls, bells crashing through the cold air, and fire flashing against old stone walls. It looks like a nightmare invading a postcard, and that is exactly why Krampus night is so unforgettable. The question is not just why Austria still stages something this wild in the middle of its most sentimental season. The deeper question is why people have fought so hard to keep it alive. Krampus night, or Krampusnacht, is most closely tied to the evening of December 5th, the night before St. Nicholas Day, and in Austria it is especially powerful in the Alpine regions, above all in places like Salzburg, Tyrol, and the valleys of the interior. In the city of Salzburg, under the shadow of Hohensalzburg Fortress, and among the Baroque squares of the old town, the contrast is almost cinematic. You can move in minutes from a calm Christmas market scented with cinnamon and roasted almonds to a parade route where giant masked figures slam chains against the pavement and surge through the crowd. Visually, few winter traditions in Europe are this intense. Culturally, even fewer carry such a dense mix of folklore, craft, performance, fear, and community memory. The exact origin of Krampus is debated, and that uncertainty is part of the story. One widely accepted view is that the tradition grew out of very old Alpine winter customs long before it became connected to the December calendar of St. Nicholas. Across mountain Europe, winter was never just a season. It was darkness, risk, hunger, isolation, and the fear that nature itself had turned hostile. Long before modern streetlights and heated homes, communities created loud masked rituals to confront that darkness. Some scholars connect these figures to pre-Christian seasonal rites. Others are more cautious and say the oldest layers are impossible to prove with certainty. But most agree on this much: by the time written references begin to appear, the Alpine world already knew the power of fur, horns, noise, and frightening disguises in winter. There is even a striking early clue often mentioned in Austrian discussions of the custom. St. Augustine wrote critically about young men in furs making loud winter processions, suggesting that church authorities had already noticed this kind of behavior many centuries ago. That does not prove today's Krampus looked exactly the same. It does show that noisy, masked winter roaming in Europe is very old. Over time, those rough seasonal figures were gradually folded into the Christian calendar and attached to the visit of St. Nicholas. In that pairing, the contrast became clear and dramatically effective. Nicholas rewarded, Krampus threatened. One brought order. The other embodied the danger waiting outside the circle of light. Even the name carries that roughness. Krampus is usually linked to an old German word for claw, which fits the figure perfectly. In traditional imagery, he is not a sleek devil from a painting. He is more physical than that. He has horns, fur, a long tongue, animal energy, and the weight of a mountain creature. In many Austrian regions, he appears with chains and bundles of birch rods. Historically, those rods symbolize punishment, but they also connect to older vegetation and winter renewal imagery. And that is where things become more interesting, because Krampus was never just a morality character for children. He also became a public way of acting out the struggle between order and chaos, light and darkness, the domestic world and the wilderness beyond it. As the custom spread through the Habsburg lands, it changed from place to place. In some villages, Krampus was mainly part of house visits with St. Nicholas. In others, it developed into large public runs, known as Krampusläufe, with organized groups called Pesa. Some regions blurred Krampus with related Alpine figures such as the Perchten, who are more closely tied to the darkest nights around the turn of the year and to driving away winter spirits. In Salzburg today, locals still draw a distinction. Krampus traditionally belongs to December 5th in the Nicholas cycle. Perchten belong more properly to the Rauhnächte, the winter nights between solstice and Epiphany. But in modern parades, the visual language often overlaps so much that many visitors can barely tell where one ends and the other begins. That confusion is not a mistake. It is the result of centuries of adaptation. Church authorities often look suspiciously at these masked customs. Later reformers and modern officials sometimes tried to regulate them because they were loud, unruly, and too close to older folk beliefs for comfort, yet they never fully disappeared. In the 19th century, as interest in folk culture grew, many alpine traditions were revived or reshaped as symbols of regional identity. By the 20th century, Krampus had become not only a seasonal figure, but also a marker of local pride. Old postcards from Austria and Germany in the 1890s and early 1900s even turned him into a strange pop icon. Those Krampus cards showed him stuffing children into baskets, dragging chains, grinning with menace, and somehow becoming both comic and disturbing at the same time. So even before social media, Krampus was already visually made for mass attention. Why is Krampus Night celebrated at all? In neutral documentary terms, it serves several functions at once. Historically, it was tied to the St. Nicholas tradition, where good behavior and bad behavior were symbolically staged through contrasting characters. Socially, it gave communities a controlled form of disorder at the darkest point of the year, a night when noise, masks, and confrontation were allowed. Folklorically, it preserved older Alpine ideas about winter as something to be challenged rather than simply endured. And in the present day, it remains a public ritual of identity. For many Austrians, especially in rural regions, this is not a horror show invented for tourists. It is a living custom that says who they are, where they come from, and how the winter season is experienced in their part of Europe. The people who make Krampus Night happen are far more varied than outsiders often imagine. There are the Pesa, the organized Krampus groups that spend months planning costumes, rehearsing, transporting gear, and preparing routes. There are mask carvers, fur workers, horn suppliers, blacksmiths, bell makers, and local tailors. There are families arranging St. Nicholas visits for children. There are volunteers handling barriers, security, and cleanup. There are innkeepers and stall owners preparing for one of the busiest winter nights of the season. There are older residents who remember how different the runs looked decades ago, and teenagers who dream of joining their first group. In some areas, children start young with simple masks before eventually graduating into full costume. And that is exactly what makes the festival different. It is not just watched, it is inherited. Preparations begin long before the first bells are heard in December. In workshops across Austria, blocks of Swiss stone pine are cut and roughed out with chainsaws before being shaped by hand into snarling faces. A good wooden mask can take around 40 hours to complete, sometimes more. Carvers work from the rough structure toward the small details. The brow line, the nostrils, the lips, the teeth, the tongue, the sockets where the eyes will sit. Some craftsmen prefer a more traditional face with less blood and less fantasy. Others create exaggerated monsters with huge cheekbones, cracked textures, or lit eyes. But the best masks still feel rooted in alpine material culture. Pine wood, goat fur, ram or ibex horns, horsehair, leather straps, and real bells give the costume weight and presence that plastic never could. The hidden engineering of these masks is fascinating. Many viewers never notice that the eye openings are often placed below the carved eyes, not inside them. That lets the mask look less human and more unnerving, while the wearer sees through a lower slit. Ventilation holes are often built into the nose. Some masks have movable jaws. Others are fitted with glass eyes or battery lights. The inside must fit the performer's face closely enough to stay stable while running, stamping, and swinging. One Tyrolean mask maker called that interior the second face, because it has to match the wearer as carefully as the outer face matches the character. Yet most people never notice this part, even though the entire illusion depends on it. The costume around the mask matters just as much. Fur capes and full-body hides are selected to match the head. Heavy belts carry multiple cowbells that can turn each step into a blast of sound. Chains are chosen not only for symbolism, but for rhythm. Birch bundles are tied together. Boots are reinforced for cold streets and uneven ground. Some groups use real horn again out of tradition after years of artificial materials. Others weather the wood naturally so the masks age into something more believable. A full outfit can be expensive, physically demanding, and hot despite the winter air. The irony is that on the coldest night, many performers inside those furs are sweating. Meanwhile, towns prepare in a different way. Barriers go up along the route. Christmas stalls stock more mulled wine, punch, sausages, roasted chestnuts, pretzels, sweet pastries, and hot soup because everyone knows the evening crowd will linger. Shop windows balance holiday warmth with a hint of the wild night ahead. Advent wreaths, fir branches, red ribbons, and winter greenery decorate doors and balconies. Krampus is not a flower festival in the usual sense, but the streets still carry seasonal color through poinsettias in windows, evergreen garlands over market stalls, and bunches of holly and red berries glowing under yellow lights. The setting matters because Krampus night works through contrast. Beauty first, then disturbance. By the morning of December 5th, the city still feels almost ordinary. In Salzburg, the market squares are calm compared with what is coming. Vendors set out cups and sweets. Delivery vans move through the back lanes. Workers test lighting and check sound. In smaller towns and villages, St. Nicholas costumes may be laid out neatly in parish rooms or community halls, while the Krampus gear hangs nearby like sleeping animals. Children heading to school know exactly what day it is. Some are excited, some are nervous. Adults joke about being good. The whole place carries that quiet tension of an event everyone already understands without needing to say much. Through the afternoon, the mood changes. Visitors begin arriving early to claim good viewing spots. Tourists with cameras stand beside locals who know from experience not to get too close. Families with small children usually stay near the safer edges, especially in cities where designated parade routes keep things more controlled. In village settings, the line between performer and audience can be much looser. You hear the first bells before you see anything. Somewhere behind a side street or behind the market stalls, the performers are gathering. The sound is heavy, irregular, metallic, almost like livestock transformed into warning sirens. And suddenly, the whole festive atmosphere of Advent develops a darker undercurrent. The opening moments are often the most deceptive. St. Nicholas may appear first, calm and stately, sometimes accompanied by angels or attendants, reminding the crowd that this tradition belongs to the broader winter calendar and not just a spectacle. For children, this part is still recognizable and almost comforting. Gifts, nuts, sweets, and simple moral theater remain part of the custom in many places. But the real story begins here because Nicholas is never the whole scene. He is the measured figure at the center of a world that is about to lose its calm. Then the Krampus groups enter, and the atmosphere changes instantly. Fur fills the frame, horns rise above the crowd, bells crash against each other in waves, chains strike stone. Some figures lunge, some dance in short, violent bursts. Some move slowly and stare, which can be even more unsettling. Their masks are rarely identical. One may have a long red tongue hanging from black lips. Another may have twisted goat horns and a face carved like old bark. Another may be almost animal, with tusks, hair, and asymmetrical features. The visual richness is overwhelming because these are not uniform costumes from a warehouse. They are built character by character, pass by pass, village by village. The music is not always music in the conventional sense. Sometimes it is drumming, sometimes amplified sound, sometimes just the elemental mix of bells, stamping, whip cracks, chain, rattling, and shouted calls. In some places, fire breathers or torch carriers heighten the drama. Sparks rise into the winter dark. Smoke catches the floodlights. The horns cast long shadows on old facades. If you are standing in a narrow Salzburg lane, the effect is especially intense because the sound rebounds off the stone and seems bigger than the street itself. What looked like a parade begins to feel like a controlled eruption. And yet, beneath the shock, there is structure. Krampus runs in modern Austrian cities are usually organized along clear routes and fixed times. Safety teams, barriers, police presence, and event managers keep the night from sliding into chaos. That is one of the most important differences between the myth of Krampus and the real event. What the viewer experiences as danger is usually highly choreographed. The performers know when to surge, when to pose, when to interact, and when to move on. In some rural runs, the experience can still be rougher and more intimate, but even there, unwritten rules matter. Locals know how close to stand, when to step back, and which groups are more traditional versus more theatrical. The objects carried by the Krampus figures each add a layer of meaning. Chains suggest restraint, punishment, and noise powerful enough to wake a village. Birch rods recall the old idea of disciplining bad behavior, though in many places their use is now symbolic or heavily softened. Baskets and sacks appear in some imagery, echoing the old warning that naughty children might be carried away. Bells are perhaps the most important of all. Large alpine bells do more than make noise. They announce a presence before it arrives. They turn movement into force. They connect the human performer to the world of animals, mountains, and herding culture. When dozens ring together, the sound is almost physical. In parts of Austria, especially in valleys known for preserving older customs, the event can include regional practices outsiders rarely expect. In Gastein, for example, one of the best-known traditional elements is Rempong, a shoulder-to-shoulder wrestling contest between Krampus figures that symbolizes overcoming evil rather than becoming it. This is a crucial detail because it challenges the lazy assumption that the costume simply celebrates darkness. For many communities, the point is exactly the opposite. The frightening figure takes on the winter threat in visible form, so it can be confronted, mocked, controlled, and finally sent away. Village traditions add another layer. Outside the big city runs, St. Nicholas and Krampus may still go from house to house. In these visits, the custom becomes smaller, more personal, and in some ways more powerful. The kitchen, the hallway, the family table become the stage. Nicholas speaks, children answer. Krampus waits beside him, silent or growling, a reminder that behavior has consequences. To outsiders, this may feel severe. To many families, it is part theater, part memory, and part inherited seasonal rhythm. Over time, the roughness has been softened in many places, but the emotional pattern remains unmistakable. As evening deepens, Krampus night reaches its visual peak. This is when the city stops looking like a Christmas card and begins looking like folklore made real. Blue winter twilight fades into black sky. Firelight flickers on wet cobblestones. The fortress above Salzburg becomes a dark outline. Steam rises from cups of hot punch while, only a few meters away, a 6-foot creature in carved pine and goat fur stares down into a stroller and then turns away with a rattle of bells. Cameras lift everywhere, but even in 2026, screens cannot fully capture the sensory force of standing there. The smell is wood smoke, cold air, wool, food, sweat, and torch fuel. The sound is impact and echo. The feeling is excitement mixed with caution, which is exactly the emotional balance that keeps people watching. There are also details most visitors miss in the rush. Some of the heaviest masks in related Persian traditions can weigh far more than a standard Krampus mask, sometimes reaching 15 or 20 kilos, while many Krampus masks are smaller and lighter, built for speed and interaction. Some groups carefully preserve older carving styles that avoid gore in favor of age, expression, and animal form. In Salzburg alone, there are said to be around 200 organized Passa connected to this broad tradition. Across Austria, thousands of carvers work with these forms either professionally or as serious hobbyists. What looks like a few explosive nights in December is actually the visible tip of a year-round craft culture. That craft culture matters because Krampus night survives not only through performance, but through making. A mask can outlive its first owner. It can be repaired, exchanged for a larger one, or passed down. Fur clothing can be adapted for younger members joining a group. Bells and horns become cherished objects with stories attached. Some communities keep archives of old photos and parade records. Museums in Austria even preserve masks from the early 20th century, showing how the face of Krampus has changed without losing its core. In that sense, every run is both live event and moving exhibition. The economy around the festival is real too. Hotels fill with winter visitors. Restaurants extend hours. Christmas markets gain another surge of business. Workshops selling carved masks, horns, costumes, and traditional accessories benefit from demand. Local tourism boards promote the runs because few things draw international attention as effectively as a festival that looks this dramatic on camera. But the modern relevance of Krampus night goes beyond tourism. In a time when many local customs are flattened into generic seasonal entertainment, this one still feels stubbornly specific. It belongs to the Alps. It belongs to the places that built it. And precisely because it is visually extreme, younger generations keep finding reasons to claim it as their own. That youth involvement may be one reason the tradition still has momentum. In many regions, boys begin early with simple masks and gradually work toward full participation. Young adults join Pasi not just to wear costumes, but to build routes, manage events, drive trucks, carve props, and learn the codes of the custom from older members. Social media has changed the look of the night, of course. Groups now release posters, videos, and teasers. Masks are photographed like rock stars. But that has not necessarily emptied the tradition of meaning. If anything, it has forced communities to think more clearly about what they want to preserve. The craftsmanship, the discipline, the regional style, and the sense that this belongs to more than one season's trend. By late night, the pace shifts again. The largest groups pass, the loudest surges begin to thin out. The crowd relaxes, though the occasional bell still breaks through from a side street. Food stalls do one last rush of hot drinks. Children who were wide-eyed an hour earlier are asleep in strollers or wrapped in blankets on their parents' shoulders. Performers, once terrifying, begin to look exhausted as they remove masks backstage and step out of character. It is one of the strangest final images of the night. The demon disappears, and underneath is a local mechanic, a carpenter, a student, a father, a teenager, somebody you might have walked past that morning without noticing. And maybe that is the final secret of Krampus night. It is not really about demons taking over a city. It is about a community choosing for a few hours to turn its fears, its winters, its moral stories, and its old mountain memories into something visible. The masks are frightening, but they are also handmade. The chaos is loud, but it is also organized. The darkness is present, but it is framed by market lights, church towers, family rituals, and the return of morning. In Austria, Krampus survives because he gives winter a face people can meet directly. So when the bells fade and the smoke clears from the streets of Salzburg, what remains is more than a spectacle. It is a reminder that tradition does not stay alive by being gentle, polished, or easy to explain. Sometimes it survives because it is rough, memorable, slightly uncomfortable, and impossible to confuse with anything else. Krampus night still matters because it gives modern Austria something rare. A winter ritual that feels ancient without being frozen, local without being closed, and theatrical without losing its roots. In a season usually filled with softness, it insists on showing the harder edge of December. And that harder edge, paradoxically, is what makes the whole season feel more real.